938 Live. This is Talkback.
As you've been hearing in the news, Singapore's Public Service Division is moving to give better career prospects to non-graduates, non-graduate teachers, for instance, with outstanding performance, it has been announced, or many years of experience, will soon be placed on the graduate salary scale as well. All of this follows Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong's National Day rally speech. He touched on giving all Singaporeans the opportunity to reach their full potential, no matter their background and circumstances. You would have also heard that in the next 3 years, Polytechnic and Institute of Technical Education, or ITE, students and graduates will have better internships, more opportunities to work and study concurrently, and clearer pathways for career advancement. This comes after the government accepted the 10 recommendations from the Applied Study in Polytechnics and ITE Review, or ASPIRE committee. Among them, helping students make better informed education and career guidance, or ECG choices, by strengthening education and career guidance efforts in schools, polytechnics and ITEs. Now, to provide more options for graduates to upgrade their skills, place and train programs will also be launched. These will be similar to the apprenticeship models in Switzerland and Germany, and they'll be piloted in selected sectors from the year 2016. The programs will involve companies employing these graduates to pay them monthly salaries. They will have structured on-the-job training in the workplace on top of classes at the polys or ITEs. Sector-specific skills framework and career progression pathways will also be developed with industry players to help these graduates progress in their careers. New modular courses built around these skills frameworks will be introduced, allowing them to develop specific skills for progression. Question is, do the ASPIRE committee's recommendations go far enough to help Singaporeans realize their potential and progress in life, no matter their starting point? Would you encourage your kids to take the poly or ITE path? Can you see the vocational track as being on par with the academic track in education? As an employer, how could these changes benefit you, and how would these changes help your business? What challenges do you foresee perhaps in committing to more development and training opportunities for your employees? Call us on 669-11-938. Talk to us also on Facebook, official 938 Live. Joining us today, our Senior Minister of State for Education, Indranee Rajah. She chairs the ASPIRE Committee, and Executive Chairman of Sakae Holdings, Douglas Foo. Thank you very much and welcome both. First of all, Ms. Indranee, why was this review necessary?
I think it's timely. We do regular reviews for the polys and ITEs, but we also wanted to make sure that, whatever it is the case, you have good chances of advancement. And we felt that more could be done. We also felt when we spoke to the employers that there was a real need for skills. And the poly and the ITE students, by the nature of their training and education, are sort of geared towards that. So the idea was, how could you enhance it and improve their job prospects and opportunities? And also recognize them more for their training and skills. Absolutely.
I started off as a poly diploma holder at MediaCorp. And frankly, I thought I was treated pretty well here. Within a few months, I was reviewed and my performance was seen to be better than a lot of graduates who entered at the same time, or at least on par. And I had good bosses who worked on it and helped me progress. Fact is that this doesn't happen in every company. So I'm wondering also about some of the challenges that we might face when it comes to employers running with this. Douglas, perhaps you could step in here.
Well, I think today environment is a very labor-type market, and there's a dearth of talent around, and organizations who are actually growing are always continuously looking for talent. So it's a very opportune time where such initiative is started, because when people start to see that companies like MediaCorp, which is actually doing the right thing by embracing this at a very early stage, and other companies that are starting to do that, actually reaching certain success, the rest of the companies will decide to actually join the bandwagon.
What is the mindset, though, right now among employers when it comes to how poly and ITE graduates are currently perceived?
I think currently most companies will look at ITE and poly graduates as very hands-on, very skill-based already. And most of the feedback that you get is they can get onto the road and start running at a very early stage. And I think with this whole review, it actually acts to help to prepare even further and enhance all these things that has already been done for a longest time.
The sad thing is that even though you said a lot of people recognize the value of ITE and Poly graduates, there is still a salary differential. Polytechnic graduates still start off at a much lower salary than university graduates, generally speaking, according to latest studies and surveys. In terms of median gross monthly salary, uni graduates get about $3,050. Polytechnic graduates get about $2,000. Now, this certainly would affect perceptions of value, even though the Poly grad or the ITE grad might have superior skills and capabilities. To what extent do you think this needs to be changed once the recommendations take effect as well, Ms. Indranee?
I think there are two parts to that. One is where you start, and the second is how you progress. Poly graduate would have studied for 3 years. University, let's say 2 years JC, and then another 3 years. So that's about five years, and sometimes if it's a 4-year course, it's 6 years. So because of the longer period of study, you would expect some differential. But what's important is that the differential should not be too great, where the skills for the job are something that meet the employer's needs. So that's one part of it. The second part of it, though, is once you go in, how do you progress up? And if you have experience on the job, if you have gained skills, then the mere fact that you don't have another type of qualification should not be an impediment. You should be able to progress. And also don't forget, when you're in the job, sometimes you need to acquire additional knowledge to go to the next step. Question is, do you need a full-blown degree for that? Or do you need, can you do it in smaller bites, short courses? So when you look at the recommendations here, right, it was really intended to give people different options and many paths to progress and to get ahead.
And it very much depends on the individual to have to work towards that particular goal that they want to achieve as well in their careers.
That's right. And also for the employers to recognize individuals and in certain cases encourage them to develop their talent and to move along to the next step.
You did mention that the salary differential perhaps has to be narrowed. I only go back to that because among Poly and ITE graduates, some of them feel that they should straight away after their diploma go out and get a degree because of that particular issue. I mean, value is given to them based on their degree or their diploma. You did mention that the Aspire Committee survey some time ago of 10,000 Polytechnic students and 4,000 ITE students found that almost 6 in 10 ITE graduates and 4 in 10 Polytechnic students intend to get their next qualification right after graduating, even though they can be employed without, say, a Poly diploma for ITE students or a degree for Poly students. Students feel they won't be able to be successful without those qualifications. What results do these Aspire recommendations need to achieve in order to change this?
Well, I think at the end of the day, you look at outcomes, right? That's what people are really after. And outcomes in what terms? In salaries, in promotion prospects, and also how people regard you. So the recommendations are geared towards allowing you to achieve those outcomes without necessarily having to go for a particular type of qualification and do it on the job, so that your qualifications are geared towards the skills that you acquire and to your job scope. So that's one part of it. But the other part of it is also how we value jobs, how we value people, and really having pride in work. Yeah. And I think that's a very important thing.
What are some of the challenges that small and medium-sized enterprises might face, Douglas, in operationalizing some of these recommendations?
I think this was some of the areas that was being deliberated during the discussions. And certainly, I think we would like to assist and help the small, medium enterprises come on board as well. And some of the suggestions are larger companies helping with it's like a twin B concept to help the rest of the companies that are suppliers to them. And the other part is actually using associations, federations, to help the trade chambers to actually assist, because some of this back room could actually be aggregated at the back end.
What areas do you think these companies will need assistance in?
I think if they are the same industry and you need to do certain curriculum, because of the professionalism within that industry, the trade and chambers can actually help to operationalize some of the back end and then help the companies to actually start rolling out some of these projects using that platform as well.
I've heard that the place and train programs could also be disruptive to business operations since the employees' attentions will be split. That's what one or two SME owners have mentioned. How challenging will it be really for smaller businesses to integrate such programs directly into their work processes?
Actually, we have done some studies overseas, and there are companies that are much smaller scale and have done really well in some of those areas in helping to build deep skills at a very early start. So I think it's a journey, probably with a start of a few companies, and there are certain success stories. There'll be more companies that will come on board. I think training has to be seen as a longer term investment, especially for organizations going forward.
Now, some businesses have said that they would appreciate some government funding for such programs, but considering the aim is to encourage lifelong learning, upgrading, as you mentioned as well, Douglas, how can businesses be made to see training and apprenticeship programs as being good for their business rather than a cost or inconvenience for which they need government assistance? Ms. Indranee?
Actually, I think businesses do need labor. They do need people. And which are the ones that are successful in retaining people and attracting people? These are the ones that develop their human potential. So if companies and employers take that approach, that, I'm investing in a person and helping them to grow and develop, one, is obviously good for the person, but two, it's good for the company. And all the best, the companies with the best HR records have that kind of mindset and approach. So if companies approach it this way, I think that they will find that it's beneficial to them as well.
What is the possibility of companies getting grants or incentives to run such programs with integrity?
There are actually existing schemes which they can tap on. There's the Spring Development Capability Grant, and there's also the SME Talent Scheme, and a few others. But we're reviewing this. We'll consider what can and should be done. They can tap on the existing ones in the meantime, and we'll have to see how it plays out.
How can the integrity of such programs be ensured such that the students will not be simply treated as part-time help? Douglas?
I think that's an area that the committee actually made a long discussion as well, because sometimes by enhancing the internship, it becomes a longer-term extra help, and that's something that we do not want to see. In fact, during those times, I think there will be closer collaboration between companies, organizations, and the school. So for a while, actually, most of the time, the training is done in school. Then thereafter, you enter the workforce. Right now, it's about bridging that gap, that divide. So day one, actually, when you enter the workforce, you can be paid higher. Because during this discussion, when we talk to employers, that if the person can actually perform well, are you willing to pay higher? And the answer is yes. Why not? And so if we build those skills to enable them to start day one at a much higher contribution to the organization, well, the starting pay will be higher.
How do you, manage expectations for those who are in the place and train programs and internal resources? Some of them saying, or co-workers saying, okay, these guys come and go and they're doing their studies. They're not being as productive as they should be expected
as full-time
to.
help,
as full-time help should
because
be.
for a couple of days they'll be, in school.
Yeah. How do you manage those expectations?
Go ahead, Ms. Indranee.
Actually, that's something that when we did our study trips, we looked at the German and the Swiss models, and in fact, the opposite is true. The opposite is true because they're learning in a different way. You're learning practical, hands-on in the workplace, and what you're doing is you're supplementing that with the theory and the other content
That's
part.
Right.
And it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's sector by sector. So you have to gear it. If you're, let's say, doing marine and you're out on a ship for a month, then of course you can't be hopping back and forth every few days. Yeah. But if your workplace is in Singapore, then that's much easier to do. 3 days in workplace, 2 days in school. But the point is this: it's really having the hands-on together with the theory content, which gives you a better informed way of learning.
You mentioned Switzerland and Germany earlier, where you went for a study trip, and you have said before, Ms. Indranee, that 60 to 70% of every cohort in Germany and Switzerland go for the vocational route instead of the academic route. Most people view it as being on par with the academic route when it comes to the perceptions of the vocational route. Question is, how can such a cultural change occur here in Singapore? Your initial thoughts on this before we go to a break. Ms. Indranee?
It comes back to that question of how we see people and how we see jobs. And fundamentally, if you respect the job and you know that somebody is working hard and you give them the opportunities, I think that's something that's very important. And, you know, so long as you're making a contribution, then you must give that person an opportunity to move ahead.
Yeah.
Some say that the shaping of mindsets has to occur earlier while the kids are still in school so that our next generation of people don't discriminate in this manner. Douglas, your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that's where the ECG comes in. The ECG actually gives an assist to discover the strength of the youth as they progress and move their education and their career.
ECG, by the way, education and career guidance counselors will be in schools.
That's right.
Go on.
Yeah, and so with that, I think there will be a lot of opportunities given, and the youth will realize that a society needs all types of people to exist, and I think that will be a very good foundation block.
Stay with us on 938 Live. We'll talk more about this right after news and sports. Tell us how you feel. Would you encourage your kids to take the Polytechnic or ITE path? Can you see the vocational track as being on par with the academic track in education? Do you think the recommendations and changes that we have seen announced so far in the PSD, the Public Service Division as well, go far enough to show Singaporeans that they can realize their potential and progress in their careers no matter their starting point? Now, in the next 3 years, Poly and Institute of Technical Education or ITE students and graduates will have better internships, more opportunities to work and study concurrently, and clearer pathways for career advancement. Do you think the Aspire Committee's recommendations go far enough to help Singaporeans realize their potential and progress in life no matter their starting point? Also, you would have heard in the news that Singapore's Public Service Division is also moving to give better career prospects to non-graduates. Tell us how you feel. Would this help change mindsets? Would you encourage your kids to take the Poly or ITE path? Can you see the vocational track as being on par with the academic track in education? Let's see what Mr. Rang has to say about this. Good morning, Mr. Rang.
Hey, good morning. Hi. I'm actually a product of the Polytechnic path.
Well, hello, fellow Polytechnic diploma holder.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have a degree, and I went on to took on a professional accountancy and chartered secretary, and I'm doing very fine now. I would encourage my children to go to Polytechnic. However, I would be very cautious because at the age of 15 or 16, most of the times they don't know what they want. So I have a son that is 17 now, and he was faced with a decision last year, and I told him, because he doesn't know what he wants, so I asked him to go for A-level because it's a safer path. He can still decide on the Polytechnic path after 2 years at the JC.
Well, hopefully the ECG efforts that will be put in place will help individuals like your son as well. We're talking here about education and career guidance officers that will be in schools. To what extent, sir, do you think more is needed in order to change mindsets across the board, though?
I think that is a very, very good step, and it's a very positive step because I would say that was the problem many, many years ago, and having the public service or the Temasek Link companies to also take the lead to take on that discrimination scheme, I would say, because I'm also started work with a Temasek Link company where 30 years ago, it was so obvious whether you're a graduate or non-graduate, your pay scheme is like half the difference.
What about later on in your life? I mean, you did say that you've done very well. But for how long did you feel discriminated against? What steps did you take in order to make sure that you were not discriminated against?
I think I didn't really focus about the discrimination. I just focus on what I can do and enjoy what I do. I think I am doing well. I'm doing fine. I wouldn't say that it's very well. At the end of the day, we have to accept what we can do and do the best what we can do because you can't control what other people do.
All right, thank you very much for that. Do call us on 669-11938. We've got Mr. Tan joining us now. Hi, Mr. Tan.
We've got Mrs. Lim actually holding on. Hi, Mrs. Lim.
Hello.
Yes, you have a question
I have
for
a
the
comment
panel.
to make.
Yes.
Yeah, my daughter is 16 this year, and she's also thinking about whether to go to the poly or the A-level route. Then I received many mails from the poly encouraging my daughter to go to the poly. I guess every poly was trying to get her to sign up for their route, but none from the A-levels. I also would like to say that some courses, I feel that you really need a degree. But the problem is they are offered at the poly level. For example, banking, accounting, these professions, you need a degree. I don't know why is it that they are offered at the poly level. Because if you offer that at the poly level, if you have, for example, a banking degree, you end up as a teller. If you have an accounting diploma, you end up as a bookkeeper, not as an accountant. So
the point is, though, that in Singapore, there are degree courses for the areas of expertise that you just mentioned.
Yes.
So the option is there.
Diploma level. They shouldn't be there because if
they shouldn't be offered at diploma level at all, you're saying?
Yes, because if they offer at the diploma level, all these students going thinking that they will their pay wouldn't be much different from the degree level, they will be very disillusioned because when they come out, you find that their pay is a big difference. But certain diploma like technicians and maybe lab technicians, all these years, maybe the pay scale won't be so different because they actually have a skill. But for accounting and business, especially business, I'm wondering why are they offered at the poly level? So
thank you very much for that. Let's address that for now. Ms. Indranee, what's your response to that?
I think the polys and universities offer different things at different levels. When you go into poly and you do something like accountancy and you come out with the accountancy diploma, the idea is that you should be able to work straight away with that. And it gives you, the kind of skill that enables you to go in at a certain level and do certain things. I think the real question is, after you go in, can you rise, can you progress on the strength of that diploma? And the answer is it ought to be yes if you've acquired the skills in the workplace. I think on her point of her daughter wanting to or needing to make a decision, that's really one of the reasons why we had the recommendation for career guidance to help the student decide, look at the choices and say which one is better for me depending on what I want to do later. And the whole idea is to give people more options.
Let's see how Mr. Tan feels about this. Ready to take Mr. Tan's call now, Andre?
Absolutely. Mr. Tan?
Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. I think definitely I welcome the recommendations by the Aspire Committee to recognize skills. And I share the sentiments of the earlier parents, the hesitation to go to the IT and Poly route because of specialization in certain vocations, especially when children are not sure where are the strengths and skills and interests are. But on the other hand, I think that the group of students who at a very early age segment, so they are quite clear that they are not inclined to the academic path, and they are more inclined to skills-based and hands-on based. So my suggestion is, would options to be made available to these students to go to the vocational route earlier, say after Sec 2, instead of making them go through 4 or 5 years of academic route before they can go to IT or Poly.
Thank you very much for that question, Mr. Tan. What do you think, Ms. Indranee? Will that option be open? Should it be?
Well, I think one of the things we want to also ensure is when they finish secondary, they have to have a foundation in English, in maths, because these are the two foundational subjects.
Right.
Even when you go on to a vocational path, at some stage you're going to have to write reports. So, all of those things that you learn in secondary school are important base things on which to build.
Right.
Maths as well, especially if you're doing the science or engineering type vocational courses. So for the moment, I think we're really focusing at what happens when you get into the ITEs and the polys. But and in response specifically to his question is, for those who are in the secondary schools, we want to make sure that they come out of secondary schools with really solid foundation, which then they can specialize later.
How can more students be encouraged to go into fields where there is currently a manpower shortage? For instance, engineering, early childhood, nursing. How can more of them be encouraged to see the value of developing deep skills in some of these sectors? Because we've been so focused on the academics so far.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's a very good question, because what you really want is people to think about, where is my talent? Where is my aptitude? And then to focus on having the developing the skills there. And then when you go into that area, for there to be a good progression path, and for you to be able to see quite clearly, if I go into this industry sector, this is the progression path for me. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily have to be a managerial path. You could have a sort of a master craftsman type of route,
right.
Or in the case of early childhood, certain teaching tracks. So I think at the end of the day, it's all about encouraging people to see, where's my talent and how can I progress.
Let's see what Raymond has to say about this. He joins us now on 669-11938. Raymond, good morning.
Hi, good morning. I think this Aspire is really the breakthrough that we need, because I always have a soft spot for IT students, and I've seen them, even as they come and work for me, I give them very paltry salary, the 1,000. I said, give me 1 year of your time and I train you well. And within 1 year, I send him off to a Swiss company. And he gets his pay jump to 2005, and I'm so happy.
You might want to rethink the paltry salary at the beginning too. Not so paltry, please.
Yeah, but for a young person, I mean, we're talking about the young person, we groom them. So I always believe they can be groomed, and because of organizations that we work with, they trust the quality of training. But the key point is this Aspire committee. I think the best thing that happens is we have removed the label of blue collar versus white collar, because we always want them to be known as able to find a purpose and doing what they love, and the rest will follow in line.
Thank you very much for that, Raymond. Now, let's talk about this. We have an emphasis now on developing Poly and ITE grads within industries, giving them due recognition, not just in terms of salaries, but also in terms of development and career progression. How do we also ensure that university education keeps pace? Ms. Indranee, first of all.
Well, I think that fundamentally, what is the purpose of education? It's really, one, you develop individual. Two, it prepares you for the workplace. So for university education, which of course is a separate review, I think the most important thing for universities to keep in mind is that what they teach must be relevant, and it's not only the academic content, it is the real skills that you need in the workplace, communications, leadership, teamwork, all of those things. And most important from an employer's viewpoint, Douglas may want to add to this, is problem solvers. You want people who can get the job done, solve the problems, and be able to meet the
We used
demand.
to use the term helicopter view, right?
So book smarts aren't everything. We had one listener, though, who asked us recently at a Talkback town hall session that we did last weekend at the Toa Payoh HDB Hub, who said that her kids, her nieces, nephews who are in university are now asking, with all this emphasis on Poly and ITE graduates, is there a place for university graduates for a university degree? Ms. Indranee?
The short answer is yes. There's place for everybody, and there's place for a whole wide range of talents and skills. The reason is this: out there in the economy, there are all kinds of jobs. They require all kinds of different talents and knowledge, and it's not degree versus the other types of qualifications. It's really a question of what is right for you and what kind of qualification will enable you to go further in the path that is your aptitude and is correct for you.
One last thing to Douglas. To what extent do you think university graduates too need exposure to such programs to better prepare them for the 21st century workplace?
I think today, with the whole technological advancement, excuse me, the learning, the pedagogy, the teaching and the assessment have all to go through a reform, and that's what's happening right now. I think at the first step through the Aspire work. That's my humble opinion. Because by the way I look at my 4 children, if they're going to be taught the same way as I was, going to be assessed the same way as I was, and they're going to learn the same way as I was, I think they're going to not be future-proof. Because getting information now is so readily available. How do you analyze and dissect that? Use that to actually solve a challenge in the organization, coming out with new products and services for the future. And those are the things that organizations will require. The qualification is just a first step to get in, and thereafter, it's the sky's the limit for each individual.
Now, lastly, the issue of cultural change. Many have been saying all of this is very welcome, but they're worried that changing mindsets is going to be very, very difficult, that it may not happen. Ms. Indranee, your comments on how we can actually catalyze cultural change here.
I think people will see it in a couple of ways. One is they will look to see, is it really true that you will have good outcomes? And we want to make sure that that happens. But the other, of course, is how you perceive somebody. And we've got to make a start somewhere. So really, with Aspire, I hope we start now that people are thinking about it, talking about it. And at the end of the day, what is Singapore? Singapore is a place where a whole load of people have come together, make life a better place for each other. And fundamentally, for each individual, he or she has worth, and you want to make sure that that worth is realized.
Thank you very much, both of you. Senior Minister of State for Education, Indranee Rajah, who also chairs the Aspire Committee, and Executive Chairman of Sakae Holdings, Douglas Fu. Thank you both for joining us today. Now, if you have more to say about this, just talk to us on Facebook, Official 938 Live.